Hey, good morning, Catalina Foothills Church. It's a little bit of a different angle this morning on the devotion as I'm shooting here at my desk. And we talked 2 Sundays ago with Rob Penley about just greed, the sin of greed in this Lenten season. And Sunday we talked about the foundations of giving, that God owns everything. He sovereignly gives it to us for His own glory and for us to use the way He wants it to. So this Sunday, we want to talk about giving, or what some people might call tithing. And it's well established that in the Old Testament, there are, a great number of verses that talk about the gifts that are to be brought to the temple, that the people of God were to give the first fruits of everything they had. The first harvest was to come to the Lord, and the best lamb that was born was to be brought to the temple and offered as a sacrifice, both as a fragrant burning sacrifice to the Lord, and then the meat was given to feed the Levites, the priest, and that certain sins, when you committed, you had to pay for you had to buy a dove, and the dove was sacrificed, and there also had to be a gift of money given. But the New Testament comes along and it establishes this idea that we are to continue giving. And you see it, for instance, in the early part of Acts, where it says the believers were together and had everything in common. People sold their goods and gave the money to one another in an attempt to love each other. And early in Acts, there's a really frightening story where someone sold a field and laid the money at the apostles' feet. And then someone else tried to do it, but they kept some money back and lied about it, and they died. So this devotion is not intended to make you think if you don't give your money to the church, you'll die. But it is to continue this idea that God's ownership of everything means we should give. Here are a couple verses we're going to think about as we sort of move towards our Sunday sermon on giving. Number 1, 2 Corinthians 9, 6-8. Each of you should give what you have decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And God is able to bless you abundantly, so that in all things, at all times, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work. So Paul says that there's a promise in giving, right? And we're going to see that Jesus says the same thing. Paul says you should give what you've decided to give in your heart. And Paul's saying this in light of an older testament that probably had people giving away about 25% of their money, 10% sort of was the first fruits given to the church, and then there were taxations for running Israel and running the temple. But God says we are to be cheerful givers. We are to want to give it away. We are to give what we've decided to give in our heart, not under compulsion, but to do it cheerfully, because God loves a cheerful giver, and He'll bless us. He will abundantly. He's able to bless you abundantly in your giving, so that in all things, having everything you need, that God says, if you give to me, even if it hurts, I'll make sure you have all you need. So there's this promise that if we give, God will take care of us. And keep in mind, I get asked this a lot, in the day that this is written in 2 Corinthians, there aren't other Christian organizations, and there are great Christian organizations out there like a Young Life or Covenant Seminary or, all of the different places that work to help women keep their children and not abort them. There are ministries to people on the street. There's ministry to families. There's tons of Christian ministries that aren't in the church. But as we write 2 Corinthians 9, 6-8, there's nowhere else to give your money. If you don't bring it to the elders of whatever church you go to, there aren't other Christian organizations yet. Why am I saying that? Because there is some sort of thought here in the New Testament that we're to give to the church, but we're also to give to other organizations, anything Christian, anything that's in the kingdom. But notice that in the New Testament, as we think about this, there's probably, I feel like I'm picking on Young Life. There's not yet a Young Life. Young Life is a fine organization we should give to, but God says we should give to Him. And the way we do that, one of the ways we do this is we give through our church. But Jesus sort of agrees. Jesus says quite clearly here, and he says this in Luke 6, and this is interesting. This is sort of the Sermon on the Mount in Luke 6. And He says, "For if you give, it will be given unto you. Your gift will return to you in full and overflowing measure, pressed down, shaken together to make room for more and running over. Whatever measure you use to give, large or small, will be measured. It'll be measured back to you with that same measure." Or let me say that in another translation. Another way to say that is, give, and it will be given unto you a good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. It'll be poured in your lap. For the measure you use will be measured to you. One of the things we're going to see Sunday is our apprehension of God's graciousness to us is what determines our graciousness in giving to others. There is an assumption that as we grow in our Christian faith, we will give more and more of our resources away, our time, our money, and our talents. That we will want to give it away, and we will want to use an abundant measure, recognizing that as we give to God, there's this promise He'll give back to us with the same measure we use. It's amazing. For the measure you use will be measured back to you. God calls us to give cheerfully, to give abundantly, to give graciously, recognizing that what we give to God, He will measure back to us and take care of us. A lot to talk about Sunday. Look forward to it. Hope you're having a great day, and we will see you soon.